This one. Once again, the LPA.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out. My name's Guy Weeks. I work with DEP, State of Florida, and really appreciate everyone coming out to learn about the project and the ECL, which stands for Erosion Control Line. And we did not purposely pick the coldest day of the year for this meeting. If I had known it was going to be snowing in Tallahassee today, my yard was temporarily used as a ski resort, so it would have been fun to be up there for that. But when we picked this day, we had no knowledge that a blizzard was going to be coming through North Florida. So this is Zach Westfall. He works for the county to my left, and I just have a few bullet points I want to go over with you to kind of lay out the basic structure of the meeting and the hearing. So the first thing is the workshop is intended to be informal, and it's a time for you to ask questions. It's a time for us to share information with you. The primary purpose of this meeting is to go over the erosion control line, proposed erosion control line. And we want to share the state's perspective on why we need this erosion control line. But we also, once we get to the hearing portion, we want to hear from y'all. If you have information about your property that you think is relevant to the western edge of your property, we want to know about that, if there's something that we've possibly overlooked. However, we think we've done our due diligence. We think we've done our homework. We have our own title section within the Division of State Lands. So, you know, we don't think we've overlooked anything, but if we have, we certainly want to hear about it because we want to have an accurate boundary for the public beach that's going to be used, and public funds are going to be used to restore that beach. So the other thing I want to point out to you is this is not the final day for this process. There's an additional 21 days after this meeting to call and ask questions or to give formal comments. So if you don't feel comfortable or don't know what you really want to say today, you still have an additional 21 days. At the end of the process, I will be writing a hearing officer's report to share with the Division of State Lands that's within DEP. That report will either say everything is good with this proposed erosion control line and we need to move forward, or there might be some problems that need to be addressed. And so that will, you know, depending on what it is, that will go in the report and we will either move forward or not move forward. However, I will, a caveat to this is the ECL is required to move forward with the beach project. This is why we're conducting this meeting. So it is important if, you know, if something gets held up in court for some reason, that will delay the process for the project to move forward. So we're hoping that we've got a solid survey, that we've thought everything through, and that the process can move forward not only for the sake of the survey, but for the sake of the project to move forward. The other thing I will point out, you've probably seen the hard copies that are on either side of the room. If you would like to look at the survey, you can get up and look at the survey. Everything is on the county's website, so if you want to look at it on your own computer, it's available to you. And the last thing I will say, with this new ECL, your property will remain beachfront property. And we'll get into greater detail about that statement once I start going over some of the details of the ECL. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Zach. He's going to go over the project information. And then after that, he's going to turn it back over to me to where I will go over the erosion control line information. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. We will want you to come up to one of the mics to speak, and this meeting is being recorded, so be aware of that. Once we go to the hearing, pretend we're all walking down to the courtroom, because that's when it will become more formal. Everybody will be under oath when you make official statements about the ECL and/or your property. So that's all I have for now, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Zach Westfall.
Thank you, Guy. Appreciate it. Can we bring up the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Well, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. I know we've been through some crazy times here in 2024, a lot of hurricanes, a lot of craziness, obviously, but hopefully we're trying to get a way forward to try to get some sand on the beaches. So this is part of the process. I'm Zach Westfall. I work for Pinellas County. I'm part of the Coastal Management Group. So thank you all for having us over here, and thank you, Guy, for coming down here from Tallahassee. It's a long drive, 6 hours. So appreciate you coming down here to talk to us about this as well. So I'm here, Zach Westfall. I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the project we have in the permitting stages at this point. Only ask me about project stuff. I don't know about ECL stuff. That's going to be Guy. So if the stuff does come up, please wait until, guys, the expert over here knows how to answer those questions. So go ahead, next slide.
And I will add that we have a couple people online, Richard Malloy, who works with DEP, Division of State Lands, and then also Greg Garris, who works in the Beaches, Inlets, Ports program like I do, just so everyone's aware.
Okay. So here's the breakdown of the projects we have. These are our federal projects that we have in Pinellas County. There's the Sand Key project to the north, Treasure Island in the middle right there. So we are that thickish blue line in the middle where it says Sunset Beach and Sunshine Beach. And then there's also Upham and Paso Grill beaches to the south. There is the Sand Key project, which has an expiration date in 2043. So that's federally authorized. So that's a core term, so it's basically the core project is authorized until 2043, means they can construct projects up to that point until they have to get either redo a new feasibility study and reauthorize the project for another 50 years. So we'll have to go through that process. That's happened already for Treasure Island too. So it says expires 2025, but we have gone through a reauthorization to extend that. There's also the Long Key project that expires in 2030. So we just finished the Paso Grill Beach project under that authorization, but we did that as a county project. We did not have the Corps involved with that one. So that was a county-led one that was done after, that was done in conjunction with another project too. Next slide. So here's, since we are talking about Sunset Beach and Sunshine Beach, well, mainly Sunset Beach at this point, but Sunshine Beach is involved with my portion of the project, not necessarily Guy's. But what we have here is this is the previous nourishment activity of all the projects that have happened on Treasure Island. So Treasure Island actually has one of the oldest projects, I think in the state of Florida, but definitely in the state of the county of Pinellas. 1969-68 was the first nourishment project that ever happened in Pinellas County on the beaches side. So you can see that it was almost the entire beaches were filled at that point. We did fill the north and the south sections, but slowly and gradually we kind of identified two really hot spots that really needed sand, and that's Sunshine Beach, which is to the north, where it's just south of Johns Pass, and Sunset Beach, which is a segment to the south near Blind Pass. So we have, yeah, so that's essentially what that says there. So it kind of needs sand every 4 years. This has been a really successful project. It's been able to maintain all of the sand out there, filling it every 4 years. So we put about 270,000 cubic yards. That was roughly I think that's roughly how much we put last time. And here is a 1952 aerial that showed what the entrance to West Gulf Boulevard looked like. So you can see back in the day, there really was no beach at all. And there wouldn't be a beach unless there was sand being placed there over and over again. So these successive nourishments that we've had have been able to build that beach back out. And you can see a lot of those king pile groins that were buried are now kind of exposed right now because of the last storms that we've had. So you can see that there are seawalls out there, and the sand has been doing a great job, and the projects have been doing a really good job to kind of help bolster these shorelines. Next slide. So here's a little background information. In 2018, that was the last time we fully filled Sand Key. We also included Treasure Island in that portion too. So, and then so we were essentially about to go ahead and go do some another project, but then there was a issue with lands. So the Corps was prepared to nourish, but had to hold on because of lack of easements. Essentially, they could not find the real estate, and there was a lack of real estate to basically certify and sign off and show that there was clear ownership over these beaches. And there was a lack of erosion control line, which didn't help our case either. So that also kind of can muddy the water too. But then right now, this is 2024. We did actually start to do this whole process. So we are working with the Corps to make this project more compliant by having this ECL here. But the county has done. We are making sure that if there is no way we can move forward with the Corps, that we still have a way to nourish the beaches from a county perspective. So the county has permits in-house right now with Corps regulatory to try and fill the beaches. So we're essentially trying to fill the exact same template that exists for the Corps project. Next slide. So what do I mean by that? Well, you can see the beach cross-section on the bottom right. That is essentially what we try to fill. That is R140. That is essentially just a little bit north of the Sunset Beach groin. So essentially you'd be adding, to 100 feet of beach with a berm there. And so that would be really helpful to have that out there now, especially with the state that it's in. And as you can see, this is kind of what you can expect when the project comes through. If you are new to the area or haven't seen an Erosion project, that's kind of what it looks like. If you've been to Paso Grill, that's the operation where the contractor kind of fills in the beach as they're going along. They have surveyors out there to show the elevations, because it is built to a certain elevation, and that's about, you can see on there, it's a little over 5 feet in AVD. So it's about 0.5 feet above mean sea level, mean high, about mean sea level. So yeah, you can see the operations in effect right there. Next slide. So where does the sand come from? So in the past few years, we've gotten sand from Johns Pass and Egmont Shoals, which is actually that borrow area to the far right, which is near the mouth of Tampa Bay. But we also have utilized sand from Johns Pass, which is the one that's all the way to the left side. That's kind of hard to see if you're on the crowd, but maybe at home you can see it. But yeah, those have shown to really produce beach quality sand. So the same sand, white sand you can see out here on the beaches. Just outside the window, you can see outside, and we've been able to place that quality of sand on all of our project areas. Next slide. So you can see, in this slide, you can see the red area signifies the fill area. So that is essentially what the federal project fills. So it's essentially, to put it in our terms we can understand, it's a little, it's kind of close to West Gulf Boulevard down to just past the Sunset Beach Pavilion and parking lot. That's our main fill area. So you can see it on there as well. It's kind of hard to see, but yeah. Next slide. But if you have any more information, if you look for some more information, there's our email. You can contact us. We also have a website up there too. So take a photo, check it out. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask about the project. And hopefully I can help you get those answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Are there any questions about the project?
Yes, Sunshine Beach is part of the project as well.
But the last line only shows.
It's because we're talking about the ECL in this area, so I thought we'd have more just of the the Sunshine Beach portion, but there is a Sunshine Beach portion that does get filled too.
Yeah, and the ECL to the north by Johns Pass, just south of Johns Pass, that's already established, and so that's not why we're here. We're here related to the southern half of Treasure Island that needs an erosion control line. Yes, sir. And if y'all could come up to the mic to ask your questions, please, so everybody can hear them real well, and we probably have folks
Only
on.
one question.
Okay.
When?
It's a great question. We are right now, we have permits in-house with the Army Corps regulatory field. So they're going to have to give us the okay, and then once we can get that, it could be, quite a few months before we can get sand on the beaches.
Would it be before hurricane season this year?
I'm not sure about that. What do you think?
Right now, we're really still trying to figure out whether it's going to be us or the Army Corps that'll do the project. So we really need to figure out who's going to do the project before we're able to decide, how quickly we'd be able to move forward with that.
Okay. Our beach was sort of renourished after the storm. They took all the sand off the street and made a dune, which isn't a great dune, because there's hardly any beach left. Is there any more ability to help our beach before the hurricane season if you don't renourish this year?
I don't think so, unless you want to do something on your own. There are things you can do through the CCCO program, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The CCCO program, they have different things you can do through that, and try to basically, they have other protective measures that you can take, like bringing in more sand on your own for your own property, things like that.
I just want to tell you, I hear you, and we know that this is of incredible importance to you and the entire beach community, and that's why we've been working nonstop to get this done under essentially what's called an emergency permit with the Corps. There is two processes here going in parallel, because we have some of our core partners here, and some of the rules have changed at the end of 2024, and we're working through that process with them to see how that might benefit us. And if it doesn't, then we are going to be in the best position possible to nourish the beaches ourselves. And so what that would mean is for a decision to be made and a contract to go to the Board of County Commissioners to authorize the nourishment. But we will, I promise you, the Public Works Department is putting ourselves in the best position to be ready to execute when we're told to do so.
Thank you.
That's Kelly she's the Director of Public Works for Pinellas County.
Thank you.
And that's John Bishop, he's the Coastal Coordinator for Pinellas County, and he works in the Public Works as well. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. I talked to a gentleman from the Army Corps of Engineers, and they said that they are still waiting for Pinellas County to give them the go-ahead, and they're wondering why Pinellas County has not given them the go-ahead. They're waiting to do the mission, so I don't know, to start doing this project. They said they've been waiting since December.
We actually have some representatives from the Army Corps here who can clarify that.
Okay, great.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ashley Fountain. I am the Civil Works Project Manager with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in Jacksonville District. Our partners are Pinellas County, and we're excited to have this ECL hearing taking place right now. As you've heard from Guy and Zach, it is a step in the process to move forward on our federal beach projects. At this time, as Zach laid out, the Corps of Engineers has requirements to have easements to do the work on the beaches. Those requirements are perpetual beach storm damage reduction easements. We've been working with the county to obtain those. So the timeline that you saw, 2018 was when we last constructed. We were planning to have a 2023 event. We did discover that we had a deficit of perpetual beach storm damage reduction easements. And as Kelly mentioned, we have had recent legislation in the form of a Water Resources Development Act, WRDA, Water Resources Development Act of 2024, was just authorized by Congress. And in that, Section 1145 of WRDA 2024, there was some language regarding easements and some flexibilities. So at this time, given the change in administration and the fact that we currently do not have an Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, we are awaiting implementation guidance on what that language from Congress means. So as mentioned, I hope you can hear me okay. As mentioned, we do have two parallel paths going right now. We currently do have funding from Congress for Treasure Island and Long Key, but we are at an impasse right now until we get a definitive answer from the Assistant Secretary of Civil Works on how we can proceed with the language that is in WRDA 2024. So I'll just leave it at that, and if there are any more questions, I'd be happy to answer. Okay.
They've been doing beach renourishments on that beach for 50 years, correct?
We
Since
have.
1969.
Correct.
Okay. Under the current ECL, they've been doing it. Why do we have to have a new ECL to do beach renourishments?
Yes, sir, and I was going to get into that on my part of the presentation. The reason for that, it's a technicality. We have a 1968 mean high water line. It was recorded in the courthouse. It predated the ECL statute. And so one of the fundamental items that has to be done when you have an official erosion control line is you have to have a public workshop and hearing. And so, you know, a lot of time has gone by, and the right hand was not.
I don't understand what the new or the old line has to do with 50 years of beach renourishment on Sunset Beach. They've been doing it for 50 years.
Correct.
What's the line got to do with doing it again?
The line is required by law. And so
We have a line. It's been there forever.
that is correct, and it will remain in the courthouse and recorded, but we are establishing a new line that takes into account the 68 line, but also takes into account part of that line runs under people's homes.
Yeah, it sure does.
And that's a problem because the intent of an ECL is not to open someone's living room to the public. And that line represents public property. Public funds were used to build the beach. And so we are establishing a new line that will be,
Okay.
you know, to try to maintain the 68 line where we can, but there's hardened structures that we had to go around, and then we also smoothed the line out so everybody felt like they were being treated the same. And so really the property owners are going to be, you know, the state is prepared to give up some land, state land, related to that 68 line because it just wasn't very functional with obviously running under part of someone's living room. So that's the reason why we're doing this now.
I'm still failing to see something. We've been renourishing the beach for 50 years.
I understand.
Why do we have such a hard time going and renourishing the beach now to protect everybody's homes that are, it's taking out the foundations, it's going under their garages are collapsing, their cars are falling into the sand. Why aren't we putting a new beach in?
Well, I understand your frustration, and I understand the two storms that happened last year were a 1-2 punch and very challenging to deal with. That's why we're going through this process as quickly as we can to establish the ECL. It would probably only take.
I understand you want to establish a new ECL, but we renourished with the old one, and it didn't go into anybody's living room. Nobody took the front of their
understand.
house off for a tractor to drive through. They piped the sand on the beach and spread it out.
I understand. And it's, again, it's a technicality and it's a process that we have to go through. And we don't anticipate this process delaying the project process
Some of
unless.
these people are going to lose their houses while it's being delayed.
Correct, but, you know, part of what's causing some time delays is going through the permitting process, not necessarily the ECL process.
Deciding whether the Army Corps of Engineers does the renourishment or it's done privately, as far as I know, they only did it once, and after that, it's always been done privately.
No, the Army Corps has always done the project. It's always been conducted by the Army Corps.
They hire outside people to come in and do it.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they've always been bid out through the Army Corps, but like we said, we're working two paths right now, and
You're
one.
going to put the stakes where the sand's going to go to every
Yes.
time?
Yep. And right now, we have, as we said before, permits submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers, not her section, but the regulatory section, because we need permits too. So as the county, so we have permits applications in with them and permit applications in with the state so that we can make sure all the paperwork's in place so that when we're given the go-ahead, we don't have to wait a year or two to get all the permits in place because
You know the
permitting can
reason
take a
why
long
the
time.
beach keeps going away in those areas?
It's an erosion hotspot. That whole area is a
Do you know
spit of.
why it's an erosion?
It was a
erosion
spit of
hotspot?
sand that was built on back in, I don't know, the 60s or the
No,
70s?
In their report from the Army Corps of Engineers, it says because the jetty was put in at Blind Pass, changed the normal course of sand that nourished that beach. Johns Pass. Changed the normal course of sand that renourished that beach, and that's why that they're responsible to keep renourishing our beach.
Which report is that?
Army Corps of Engineer report, done in 1969.
The feasibility report,
I went to court on this. I own caddies.
Okay.
They came to me and they said, you can't have drinking on your beach because we own your beach. And I said, you don't own my beach, I own my beach. And they said, no, we own your beach. Because water came up to the back door of caddies and the Army Corps of Engineers came out and renourished the beach, and renourished beach belongs to the state. And I said, wait a minute, I read the report. The Army Corps of Engineers 1969 report said that they caused the sand to go away because of the jetty they put in. It caused the sand that normally renourished that beach for hundreds of years to not renourish the beach anymore. And that's why they came and did the renourishment. And I went to court and I won. And Caddies has a private beach because of it. The state couldn't take that beach away. And then after I did that, they passed new laws so that nobody else could do what I did.
That's out of my area of expertise. I'm not a law expert. so.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any additional questions about the project?
I just have for the Army Corps of Engineers. Thank you for being here, lady. So what do you foresee? You said that we're waiting for this and waiting for that, and I mean, I know that there's political things, but do you foresee anything happening quickly, or do you think, like this gentleman said, we're going to go through another hurricane season, which would be tragic for all of us? I mean, what's going to help? How can we help you
so
help us?
yes, ma'am, I understand. What I would say is that Congress passed a law. It can be, the way that I read it, it can be interpreted one way, but I am not an attorney, and I am not making guidance. So what we are currently waiting on is direction from headquarters on the interpretation of that law, so that way we can implement our project, hopefully. So at this point, we are poised and ready. We had plans and specs ready to go for Treasure Island and Long Key back in 2023, but those have been shelved. So we are poised and ready to go to dust those off, per se, and get moving as quickly as possible, because as I mentioned, we do have funding for Treasure Island and Long Key. So
And that funding could expire.
no, we currently have it in place. We have it. We have the cost share from the county as well. So we're literally at this point. I'm constantly asking questions. The county is constantly asking questions. We are pushing on our end. I'm pushing as a project manager sitting in Jacksonville District to understand how we can proceed forward here. So as a stakeholder in this community, as a property owner, I think you could ask questions as well. How is this interpreted by the Corps of Engineers? And reach out to your elected officials to maybe ask about that interpretation.
The interpretation of,
WRDA, the Water Resources Development Act of 2024.
to get this project started.
There is a 2-year time frame that's in WRDA, in the Water Resources Development Act.
Right, because I see that it was expired, and now you're for Treasure Island, the 2025 project.
Well, we actually have 6 more years that was going to be extended. So that is actually going to 2031.
Well, we can't wait that long.
Well, that's the period of federal participation. So those are two separate. When a federal project is authorized, I'm sorry, Guy, for taking
No,
this
that's
time.
okay. That's
But
okay.
when a federal project is authorized, it's authorized for a period of federal participation, which is typically 50 years. And it can be extended, as Zach has mentioned, because there have been extensions that have taken place for Treasure Island, obviously, since it was initially constructed. So we do have an extension. We are in the process of extending it from 2025, the period of federal participation from 2025 through 2031.
Okay, maybe I can get with you afterwards and get the language, and can help with that. Thank you.
And I will add that, we're aware that everybody was hit by 2 major hurricanes. I did damage assessments in Manatee County and Sarasota County. We're aware of how hard the county was hit and that these 2 storms were unprecedented for this area of the state. And, the primary reason we're here, and we know you have questions about the project and we want to answer those, but just keep in mind of the clock. The primary reason we're here is to go over the erosion control line, and it's an important box that needs to be checked to factor in the historical line, but also to move forward for the next 100 years. And so we want to get this box checked as quickly as possible so we can get our ducks in a row with the permitting and the ECL to put sand on the beach. That's the whole point. And that's to enhance the local economy, it's to enhance your property, and it's to enhance the economy. So, yes, ma'am, your question.
This is a question for Zach. And the slide that you presented, it said project area indicated in red for Sunset Beach nourishment.
Yes.
So it says that it's going to go down just past the Sunset Beach Pavilion and parking lot. So could you tell me what the R monument number is, where you're going to end? Because I'm from Mansions. Last time it went in front of Mansions. The time before that, the nourishment stopped right at the parking lot.
42.
Yes. Looks like it's like at R142.
R142.
Yes.
Thank you.
And that is a good segue related to the length of the erosion control line. The erosion control line is factoring in the historical line, the 68 line, but it's also at the very north end, it's not going as far north as the 68 line because we work very closely with the county, the city, and the Army Corps of Engineers, and we got to a point at the north end where, as everyone knows, the beach is very wide, and we got to a point where we're never going to be placing sand out here that we can foresee. And so we thought it was best to end the new line, the erosion control line, kind of on the south side of 104th Avenue, because there was really no practical reason to carry it further north because we wouldn't be placing sand up there because there's no need. So unless there's more information or more questions about the project, we'll dive into the ECL matters now, if everybody's okay with that. Okay. Some of it we've already touched on. I'm kind of, so again, we've already said welcome to the meeting, and I've already told you the purpose of the meeting. And this is the agenda. And we will take a 5-minute break before we get into the hearing. We can meet with you one-on-one in that break about what's on the drawings, or we can meet after the meeting if you would like to ask questions one-on-one. And again, there will be 21 days after this meeting to go over this information. As it was alluded to earlier, this beach has been nourished since 1969. That information is listed in the state's DEP Strategic Beach Management Plan. It's in the Southwest Gulf Coast region on page 9, table 3. So if you're curious about where the sand's been placed, how much has been placed, this is a good source that will give you a good summary of what has happened over time. And I'm going to get a little bit into Florida law here as it relates to beach erosion control projects. In Florida Statute 161088, the legislature made a declaration of public policy that beach erosion is a serious menace to the economy and general welfare of the people of this state. All of y'all know that better than anybody from what happened last year. And is advanced to emergency proportions, and it is hereby declared to be a necessary governmental responsibility to properly manage and protect Florida's beaches. Florida Statute 161101, beach erosion can be adequately addressed most efficiently by the state-initiated program of beach restoration and beach nourishment. Florida Statute 161141, an erosion control line must be established along the shoreline to define the property boundary between sovereign submerged lands and upland ownership. So, the reason, the questions that were brought up previously, which were good questions, the reason we're doing this is because of a technicality, and it's required by law. For us to move forward with beach nourishment here, this is a box we need to check. The ECL defines the boundary between private and public lands for beach restoration projects. That's in Florida Statute 161151. And then also in Florida Statute 161161, paragraph 4, a survey of the shoreline within the beach restoration project limits shall be conducted to locate the erosion control line. And so quickly jumping back to 1968, this is the recorded survey that's in the Pinellas County Clerk of Circuit Court. You can see it's Plat Book 2, page 24. That's the legal description for it. This is an overall picture of what Treasure Island looked like in 1962, which actually predates the 68 survey. This is on the north end. The red line is showing you where the 68 line is on top of the black and white aerials. Again, the black and white aerials are from 1962, so it may not be a perfect match, but it certainly gives you an idea of where the shoreline was back at that time period. And then this is the south end, and you can see, I believe the Corps started to build the jetty, the north jetty of Blind Pass, in 1962, but you can see here it's not captured in this particular aerial photograph. And the red line is, the 1968 mean high waterline survey. And those aerials are on the county's website, so if you want to download those aerials or just look at them and zoom in to what's being shown there, you're welcome to do that at the county website. So the erosion control line, this process legally documents and fixes the boundary between upland property ownership and public lands of the state prior to the construction of the beach projects. The area landward of the ECL remains the property of the upland owner, irrespective of future beach erosion or accretion. Property seaward of the ECL will be the public beach, and upland owners' access will not be impaired. And so this is the cover page of the proposed ECL. A couple of important points to point out in the title. It does say proposed. It's not recorded yet. It states the R monuments for the location. 132.7 is literally real close to where we are right now. It's on about the south side of 104th Avenue if you were to draw a straight line out to the beach. And then it will go down to the north jetty of Blind Pass. And then it's got the exact distance, 2.21 miles, and then the survey notes may be of interest on the cover page as well. So the ECL was professionally surveyed on July 29th through the 31st of 2024. I was there in person when it was being surveyed. This survey was overseen by DEP staff out in the field. The Treasure Island survey is 2.21 miles in length, and I just stated this information. The public workshop and hearing was noticed by mail, and also it was a publication was placed in the Tampa Bay Times and the Florida Administrative Register for this workshop and hearing. If the State Board of Trustees approves this ECL, then DEP will develop a state resolution, and we will record the state resolution and the erosion control line survey at the Pinellas County Clerk of Circuit Court. So the next part of the meeting is the hearing, but before we start that process, if anyone has any questions about the survey, the erosion control line, why we're doing this, it's important to understand from a state perspective that since 68, really since 1969 when they did the first beach nourishment, all of that sand that's been placed out on the beach that everybody enjoys, public funds were used to build that beach. And so we, just like you have a distinct boundary on the front side of your yard for the roadway, and sometimes in your yard you might have a fire hydrant in your yard, but there's a survey of where the public easement is for the road. It's not a perfect analogy, but there's some similarities with what we're doing here. We're establishing a boundary line on how to maintain the beach. And that is for the public, and it's also for the upland property owners. Okay, so do we have any questions about the ECL or the survey? Yes, ma'am.
So then this is down at the end of Sunset Beach that I'm looking at.
Okay.
And the new ECL is the boardwalk is gone, but when the boardwalk was there, the ECL was on the east side of it. And now it looks like it would be, if there was a boardwalk, it would be on the west side of it, which means that that would then become, say, Mansion's property. But it's always been, in the past, to my understanding, and I could be wrong, the town maintained the boardwalk that was on the Gulf side, and then either Land's End or Mansions would maintain the boardwalk on the intercoastal. So since that land is now part of Mansions because the ECL is being moved, does that mean that Mansions would have to fund the boardwalk if one gets put back in?
Okay. So can you come up here and show me exactly where you're talking about on those drawings to make sure I'm understanding where exactly we're talking about? Okay. Okay.
It's this
So we are at Land's End.
Right,
And
and this is the boardwalk going all through here. And the old ECL was Land's End, so that the boardwalk was owned and maintained by the city.
the city, yeah.
Now that the ECL has been moved to the west, does that mean this is our property now? And
Okay, I understand your question. So we have someone online that's going to be able to answer this question, so I'll repeat it and let him answer that, okay? His name is Richard Malloy. Richard Malloy, and he works for the Division of State Lands. Sure. Okay, everyone, we've got a question that needs to be answered, and we have someone online that can better address this question. Richard, are you there?
Yes, I am. Go ahead. I didn't hear the question fully, so if you could repeat it.
Yeah, I'll repeat the question for you. This is Richard Malloy with the Division of State Lands that works under DEP. And it's an important question that's being asked. This is related to the area at Land's End at the southern end of the project area. A question has come up? Yes? Or no? Okay. And the question, Richard, is the new ECL will be seaward or westward of the boardwalk. The old 68 line in most of that area is landward of the boardwalk. And so the question is, what happens to that land that's in between the two lines, and who also maintains the boardwalk? Because previously it's been the city, I believe, and so that's the question.
Okay, as far as the land that's concerned, that's between the two lines, those lands, the Board of Trustees is relinquishing any ownership to it. They are the only entity that would have an interest in that other than the current riparian owner, which would probably be the Land's End people. So while we can't say that that's your property, we can definitely take the cloud off by, when we establish this ECL, stating that, you know, the board has no interest in that land eastward or landward of the new ECL. Now, as far as the boardwalks and all that, whoever's been maintaining them can continue to maintain them. That's fine. That would just be status quo. Just you know, it's on privately owned lands as far as the area in between there, so they can maintain them. However, they may still have to get permits from the local municipalities, maybe the DEP district office. You know, it depends on where the CCCL is. But y'all been maintaining it now, and I'm sure there'll probably be pretty much status quo for that.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, sir.
In the area in which you're talking about, there's a difference between the ECL and the property line, and it appears that the property line is westward of the boardwalk, and the ECL comes between the property line to the west and the ECL line, which is proposed to be to the east. What restrictions, if any, will there be on the private land between the ECL and the edge of the property, a privately owned property going to the west?
You mean between the ECL and going east back towards the upland property owners?
The ECL is proposed to be between that boardwalk and the private property line, recorded property line that Land's End has down there.
Okay.
And so all I'm asking is, it's a line. What restrictions, if any, will there be on the property between the boardwalk and the actual property line, which is seaward of the boardwalk?
I understand your question, and I've talked with another individual about this. And so the property seaward of the ECL will be public state land. Public funds were used to build that part of the beach. Everyone will still have the opportunity to use the beach in the customary way. You would not be allowed to build any hardened structure seaward of the ECL. But as far as, it's similar to what the previous lady asked about the boardwalk, a lot of what's been happening out there is going to continue to happen in the same way. Not much is going to change. There might be a few exceptions to that, but typically a problem would have to arise, and then the state would look at whatever the problem arises and determine what needs to be done. Usually it's not the state that says, hey, this is a problem. Usually it's your neighbor that calls someone and says, this is a problem. But again, the ECL is basically distinguishing public beach, where public funds were used to build the beach. Everything will pretty much continue as has been, other than you will have a new official ECL recorded in the courthouse, and local ordinances will more than likely stay the exact same. So not a whole lot's going to change. But again, you will not be able to build anything seaward of the ECL. And you know, if you're talking about the area between the ECL and the boardwalk, and if you were wanting to plant sea oats, you would have to get a permit through the Coastal Construction Control Line Program.
It would be the land to the west of the ECL.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's going to be privately owned and publicly used.
Well, if it's correct, landward of the ECL, seaward of the ECL, it would be the project managers, the county and the Corps, that would be maintaining that portion of the beach. Okay.
Guy, I've just got a question, kind of follows up with the past two. For property lines that fall past the proposed ECL, is the intention of the state to use eminent domain to take that land over?
No, this is not.
Property lines will remain where they are.
Well, for your western property boundary,
Past the proposed ECL,
yeah, the ECL will supersede anything that you have in the property appraisers or any, I really should say, whatever your deed says or your survey says, your new western property boundary will be the ECL.
so you are proposing eminent domain to take that existing, well, you're saying the ECL is going to become the new property line. So
Right.
if our existing property line is westward past the ECL, or the proposed ECL, and the proposed ECL will become the new property line, we're going to lose out on the chunk of property that currently exists from the proposed ECL to our current property line.
So if you have a survey or your deed, you
Yes.
can share that with me or Richard, and we will look at that. That's one of the reasons we're having this. If there's something about your property that you think is unique, that we need to revise the survey in some way, we will look at that. But I will tell you this up front, the state's perspective is that anything seaward of that 68 line was built with public funds, and we view that as being state property. Now, and I will add this is not an eminent domain proceedings. This is nowhere close to being an eminent domain proceeding. I understand your question and why you might think that, but it's not. It would be a whole different process if it was.
If you're stating the 68 line, the mean high water line from 1968, anything westward of that line is state property. I mean, the red line you look at it on these maps, it does go through many of the properties. I mean, how can you sit and say that that's state property when it's been sold time and time again privately?
That's part of the
And it's recorded in
technicality.
the county.
That's part of the technicality that I'm referring to. This is why we need an ECL, because the intent
Hey,
of an
Guy.
ECL. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, let me field that one.
Okay, sure.
I want everybody to can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. What happened when that 1968 line was established? This was the very first beach nourishment project in the state. This is before the ECL statutes were created. That was created afterwards. That line was established, and the federal government, with the blessing of the state, filled all that land. Now, the state has a right to fill their own land. That's U.S. Supreme Court gives us the right to do that. Now, what happened after that, a lot of your predecessors in title, a lot of them started building, and they built on top of that filled land. We recognize that. The state is not interested in trying to take any property that you guys, or your predecessors, I should say, in title, have encroached onto the state. What the state's interested in is saving this beach. So what we're having to do is we're having to go to the Board of Trustees, and we're proposing to move that establish the ECL where we've shown it on the map, and asking the board to relinquish any ownership eastward of that in favor of the private upland property owner. So that way, that'll clear title to any of the private owners. Now, I do know some people have deeds that go out way beyond the ECL. A gentleman earlier says he was owner of Caddy. Yes, we were involved in litigation with him. We settled and ended up relinquishing land that was further out into the Gulf under that lawsuit. And there was one other lawsuit that we handled, did something similar. But that was a separate situation. Other people, their deeds are based upon these plats that were done in the early part of the 20th century. Well, since then, that sand has washed away from various things, erosion, whatever. And once that land, those lots wash away, the lot owner loses that. And just like if a lot of sand naturally accreted there, which we have further south down in Lee County, the state loses that land to the upland owner. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make this beach whole again, and we're also trying to take in consideration anything that the private property owners over the years have done, and that's why we've established that. We've established it out on the outer edge of where these improvements are. The upland owners will still be riparian to the Gulf of Mexico. You will still benefit from your riparian rights. And if there's anything that the upland owner needs to clear title of that, we'll be there to, we can issue a certificate to help you clear your title if anybody, if you need it. So that's what the history on this thing is. So you got to disregard these old plats. And I know the property appraiser has plotted a lot of these lots per these old plats. But that's what property appraisers do. They take a deed, regardless of what it says, they put it on their tax rolls and they start taxing. They are not supposed to determine where the boundary lines are. They are just supposed to tax the property. And that's the best thing they've got to go with, and that's what they go with. Now, once this ECL is established, the property appraiser at some point will change that, just like they did further north. I think it was Sunset Beach and all. So, that'll clear everything up for everybody, and I hope that answers your question.
So, Richard, a question pertaining to that. As Guy mentioned, the proposed ECL would create the new westward boundary of the property line. If our property line currently extends past that, we would have to then go to the county, to the property appraiser's office, to then have our property re-plotted so our tax assessment is then modified to be reduced by the square footage that we lose in property ownership.
I believe, and I'm speaking for the property appraiser, but I believe that once this ECL gets recorded, the property appraiser will put that on his tax rolls and adjust your property accordingly. If they don't, all you got to do is just tell them, hey, look, there's a property line here. This is the new boundary. And then they should pick it up. If they have any questions about it, you can have them call us. We'll be more than happy to talk to the property appraiser about it.
Mr. Bishop, you heard that, that's acceptable?
Well, I don't work for the property appraiser, so.
Right, but you work for you're the county representative. So.
Yeah, but that's a different appointing authority. But the property appraiser does know about this, and
Okay.
I think they do plan to revise the line like they do as against each other.
Okay. Okay.
And that's a legitimate question from a property owner perspective as far as, talking with the county further about that.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
okay. Thank you, Richard.
I'm confused about and I have no dog in this fight, but I'm confused about putting the ECL on the properties, on the side you are for this boardwalk, because it seems like it would create a patchwork of what will happen for the boardwalk if a chain is only as strong as the weakest link, and if one property owner decides, gee, I want to let the public use the area, and the next neighbor says, no, I don't, because I'm worried about liability or what have you, then it's not a boardwalk anymore, it's not a path. So it needs consistency. So if it's been a path and it's been customary use, if all of a sudden now you're going to have people saying, no, I don't want someone to use that path anymore, you're effectively blocking the path. So I don't see why you would put it on that side instead of leaving it to be the customary way it's been before. And also, the way the tax assessor does things, he's going to be putting he's going to, consider the marshland or whatever, the taxable area, the ECL, line will be the taxable direction. And so the people are going to be taxed. So if people are going to want to use that path, why would you want to have that be taxed on the people? Why wouldn't you draw the line on the side, on the property side, and leave the path on the beach side for the public to continue using it?
Yeah, and I understand the point you're making in the question. Richard, do you have anything you want to reply to regarding that? And do you understand the point that's being made?
No, I heard parts of it. If you could repeat it, guys, so I can understand.
Sure. Yeah, I'll repeat it. His question is, with the way we have the ECL drawn on the seaward side of the boardwalk, it puts all of the public land seaward of the boardwalk. And I think we've already addressed the question that whoever's been maintaining the boardwalk would continue to be the same from the state perspective. But his point is, why not draw the ECL on the landward side of the boardwalk? That way the boardwalk would be on public property, but then essentially the state would inherit the boardwalk too. So I just don't know if you have any insights into how to, the logic for why we.
Yeah, the only
on that
well,
side.
we put it there because, like you stated earlier, we were utilizing the 68 line and improvements. If boardwalks need to be extended to the ECL, if the boardwalks are falling short of the ECL, they can go through their regular permitting process to get, the permits to extend it to the ECL. To go beyond the ECL, that's where I think there'd be a problem. I don't think they're going to be able to extend them, but they can check with our district office. It's the Tampa district office there, and you can make a proposal to them. They'll let you know what you're allowed to do seaward of the ECL.
I wasn't referring to any improvements. I was referring to what.
Yes. And I think I understand what you're asking, and I think it's a good question, and we'll talk more about it, but I think really the answer is that you will have to, whoever's been managing that boardwalk now will continue to be managing that boardwalk. And I think I have some follow-up questions for the local governments regarding your question.
And even if it's not continuing to be managed, even if it's abandoned, it's still a path. And there's also a state statute that says, and I don't know if it's, can be considered this way, but if it's being used for access to the beach, you can't, even if it's abandoned, access needs to be maintained. It can't be abandoned. So the access ways have to always be there. You can't take away access ways to the beach. So, it should be considered, all those things have to be.
Yeah, and I think access is really more perpendicular.
Yeah, that may not be relevant.
That has to be maintained, where that's running shore parallel. So it's a little different in some regard. But I appreciate the question and comments.
I think I have a simple question. You made reference earlier to an answer that someone would have to address the CCCL, the coastal construction line. Is the ECL replacing both the high main wire line?
No.
So anywhere where that coastal construction line falls, you still have to deal with state lands for approval if you're doing any kind of construction or work?
Correct, and it's not really with state lands, it's with the Coastal Construction Control Line Program, and it's not a boundary line, it's a jurisdictional line. And it's an area of sensitivity that line represents a 100-year storm event. And so it's an area of tremendous erosion, accretion. A lot of things are going on with Mother Nature, but a lot is going on in the real estate world too. And so the intent of that program is to best advise and permit construction activities that allow you to enjoy your private property, but also try to build it, where it's impacting Mother Nature as least as possible and trying to keep the dune as healthy as possible with private development in play.
Yep.
Correct.
Do you know when that CCL line was developed?
I don't right off the top of my head. I believe it was in the 80s or the 90s. I can look it up. And
Well, the reason I ask is I own Sunset Chateau down in Sunset Beach, and we have a seawall that the CCL runs right through the middle of our boardwalk, landward of our seawall. So that line prevents us from doing any kind of construction work without going through this process. And a year ago, we had a storm rip out our boardwalk that was there, and it's been a year-long battle between DEP, state lands, and Treasure Island to try to get that permit approved. We were almost there, and then new storms came in and wiped out the entire parking lot because we didn't have any kind of protective barrier there between our asphalt and our seawall. So that it makes no sense as to why that line would have been drawn landward of a protective seawall barrier from erosion. And it's preventing us from being able to do what we need to do to protect our property that's in that small 2 to 3 foot gap between the CCCL and our seawall that's still intact.
right.
I know it has nothing to do with this. I was just curious if the ECL was going to replace that, which is what I was hoping, but obviously not.
Correct. It's not replacing the CCCL.
Okay.
Sure. Okay, any additional questions? It's 5 minutes after 7. Yes, sir.
So the 1968 mean high water line, is it going to go away?
No, it'll still be recorded in the courthouse, but it is, the ECL intent is to supersede that as the official boundary for the public beach. So the 68 line will still be recorded, but it will kind of not be used very much, except for historical reasons.
That probably then answers my question. It will not be used anymore because currently, if that high mean water line of 1968 runs east of the coastal construction control line, it's the mean high water line that dictates from where you're measuring your setbacks. So I would assume that the ECL, the new ECL, will replace the high mean water line of 68 if it runs east of the coastal construction control line.
Well, the coastal construction control line is not a boundary line. It's a jurisdictional line for the coastal construction control line program. The ECL will supersede the 68 line as designating where the public beach property is located. And so, yes, we can look at the 68 line survey whenever we need to for whatever reason, but it's the official boundary for the public beach is the proposed erosion control line that we're going over right now. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So if I have a lot that's, say, 50 by 150, and some of that lot is going past the mean high tide line previously.
Okay.
So if you have the new line, essentially my deed's going to change. Is that what you're saying?
No, we won't be changing anyone's deeds, but if your deed says you own down to the mean high water line,
yes,
the erosion control line will be superseding that portion of your deed, but we're not physically going in and changing it on your personal deed. The erosion control line is if it gets recorded in the courthouse and becomes official, it will be the recognized boundary line for the public beach and any property upland. Now, in some cases, there might be a gap in where their property line is and where the ECL is. In some cases, there might not be a gap. And it appears your property is one that would not have a gap.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Going to taxes, so on this gap land with the new ECL, will the homeowners who say, for example, have the TI 68 mean high water line through their houses and properties, will they now be paying taxes on the gap area? Everything between these two lines, is it going to be new taxable?
Well, if there's an official gap, I mean, this is something that would have to be talked further with the property appraisers to determine where your boundary line is in relationship to the new ECL and what part you're going to have to pay taxes on and what part has been revised in some manner because of the new ECL.
Some of them are quite significant on the southern side, an 8200 block and so forth.
Okay,
Which could actually double the size, the taxable size.
okay.
Have you guys addressed that, or is it handled separately?
That has not been addressed at this time, at least not by the state.
The appraiser's office?
You should have a property line right now. Regardless of where they move this, your property line's your property line. Unless they move it eastward, then you're gonna get paid less taxes. Because
Correct.
it absorbs some of your property. But if they move it westward, it's not gonna change your taxes. Because your property line stops here no matter where they move this line.
Okay. Is that clear? Is that accurate?
Yeah, and obviously, if you're wanting to claim that gap zone, the state can issue individual property owners a certificate just stating that the state is walking away from that gap land, that we're relinquishing that land, and we're not saying who owns it, we're just saying the state doesn't own it.
Okay.
And then you would have to take, between the county and the property owners would have to talk and determine how you're going to handle that, once you have that certificate from the state.
Do we know whether or not the setbacks on the western side of the ECL, are the setbacks on the western side going to be from the ECL or just from, because right now it's the mean high water line or the TI line, right?
What, are you talking about the coastal construction control line?
No, the TI line. So where will all the setbacks be to build a new home on the beach? Does it start from this?
It would have to be landward of the ECL. That I know for sure, but as far as any additional local setbacks, I can't answer that.
We're not changing any of the city's setback requirements or anything with this.
Okay. So on one of the homes we're talking about, the TI line goes straight through the kitchen, right? So they can't actually rebuild because it doesn't meet the minimum requirement of the 3,000 square foot. Will this change that whatsoever?
I would have you check with the city as to their determination on that, because that's a local ordinance.
Right, thank you.
Okay, have we answered all the questions? Any comments? I will state for the hearing portion, you would come up to the podium and you would state your name and make a formal comment, but there would not be any question or answers. It would just be making a formal statement, and it's being recorded. You will be under oath. I will be swearing everyone in. But we have one more comment before we go to that.
Yeah, sorry. I think following up on what was just asked of the city about the TI line and my house, the TI line comes through the corner of the house.
Okay.
And then through my neighbor's middle of the house, kitchen. So this ECL will replace that TI line. Is that correct?
Now, when you say TI line, are you talking about the 68 line?
Sorry, the 68.
Okay, yes, it will. Yeah, because the intent of an ECL is not to take half of someone's living room. It's to have a defined boundary of where we're maintaining the beach.
Okay, so this ECL extends about 68 feet seaward of the TI, the 68 line.
Okay.
So that extra 68 feet by 50 feet, is that additional property? Will that be exposed to additional property tax?
Yes. I mean, there may have to be a determination for your specific lot on whether that's going to be considered gap between the ECL and your old line, or whether that will just automatically become your property, but I'm not sure at this point.
But everything I've read about this is that the ECL will define, and you always state it as the property line for the state.
Right.
To me, it's the property line for the owners.
Correct. And so what I haven't seen for your lot, I haven't seen your survey and I haven't read your deed. So I can't completely answer your question without seeing that information but the ECL, yes, is the new boundary line. You know, seaward of that would be the public beach. Landward of that would be considered normally private land.
Property.
Right. But I don't know if we're dealing with the gap or whether, you know, like I said, I haven't seen your deed or your survey, so I can't completely answer that question.
Okay, who would be able to?
Well, we can talk after the workshop and the hearing, whether it's telephone, email, or, and discuss it in greater detail.
All right, thanks.
And also the property appraisers, someone at the property appraiser's office.
You did say that the property appraiser will consider the ECL as part of the appraisal.
Yes, once it gets recorded and is official.
Okay, yeah. Okay, well, I'll follow up with you then.
Okay, all right. And you have my contact info in the letter? Okay, all right. Sure.
Quick question. Will the coordinates of the new ECL be available to the public and to the civil engineers who are dealing with deeds and property lines?
Absolutely.
And where will they be available?
Yes, the survey is on the county's website right now.
It's on the website?
It
and
is.
So they can download from that. Thank you.
Right, and once it gets recorded, we will also put it in an electronic file system within DEP that will be available to the public as well.
And any changes that you might make as a result of tonight's hearing would be incorporated?
Yes, and we will, any changes that we make, we will upload the new survey to the county's website, and it will, whatever revisions we make will go into the DEP electronic filing system as well.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Just to add one addition to that, it won't be remaining on our quote-unquote county website for, indefinite, but it will be recorded in the county's official documents, so it'll be found there by surveyors and other people who know where to look.
Right. Thank you, John. Okay, we'll, looks like we're done with questions and answers, and if we can go right into the hearing if you want to, or we can take a 5-minute break if people want to go to the restroom or anything. Go right into it? Okay. All right, everybody wants to go right into it. Before we get started with that, again, you're going to have an additional 21 days after today. Day one will be tomorrow. I typically ask this question, does anybody plan to stand up and make a formal comment? Okay. So that's, I guess, the good news. If you change your mind, you can still stand up. But for the hearing portion, I have to read a 5-page document just to get certain things on file or get them on record. So bear with me for that. If you don't have to stay for it if you don't want to, but obviously you certainly can. And so I'll go ahead and get started reading, and we'll take care of the hearing portion of the erosion control line meeting. Okay. So we'll get started right now for the erosion control line hearing. Good evening. Welcome to the public erosion control line hearing. My name is William Guy Weeks. I am a planning manager with DEP's Beaches, Inlets, Ports program under the Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection. I have been appointed as the hearing officer for these proceedings. We'll wait for everybody to get out. This public hearing is being held pursuant to Chapter 161 Florida statutes for the purpose of receiving testimony regarding the merits of the proposed erosion control line for the Treasure Island Beach Restoration Nourishment Project at Treasure Island in Pinellas County. The Treasure Island project is between range survey markers R132.7 to 143.2. The ECL survey was conducted by Jeffrey L. Andrews, professional surveyor and mapper of Aptum Environmental and Infrastructure on July 29th through July 31st of 2024. Before we proceed with testimony, I would like to define for you exactly what an erosion control line is, how that line is located, and the formal process required for legally establishing the erosion control line. An erosion control line, once established, becomes the boundary line between public and private property. All property seaward of the established erosion control line is sovereign land owned by the Board of Trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund of the state of Florida. Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees consists of the governor and the cabinet. All property landward of the established erosion control line is subject to private ownership. The erosion control line survey is conducted in accordance with the accepted surveying principles and practices and is reviewed by DEP staff at both the Division of State Lands, Bureau of Surveying Mapping, and the Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection, Beaches, Inlets, Ports Program. This is where we are with respect to the Treasure Island Beach Restoration Nourishment Project and the proposed erosion control line for the specific project area at Treasure Island Beach in Pinellas County. After the erosion control line public hearing has been held, I and DEP staff will prepare a hearing officer's report based on evidence obtained at this public hearing. The hearing officer's report will contain a recommendation to either approve or not approve the location of the establishment of this erosion control line. If the hearing officer's report contains a recommendation for approval, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, acting under delegated authority granted by the Board of Trustees, will then take the proposed ECL before the Board of Trustees for consideration and final approval. If the ECL is approved by the Board of Trustees, then the erosion control line will then be recorded in the public records of Pinellas County Clerk of Circuit Court along with the ECL state resolution. There are a few issues of importance which should be discussed involving the relationship between an established erosion control line and the private property rights. Private upland property owners adjoining sovereign lands enjoying littoral, or more commonly referred to as riparian rights. Riparian rights are those rights held by the upland property owner adjoining sovereign lands and including rights of ingress, egress, view, boating, bathing, fishing, etc. These riparian rights are not diminished as a result of establishing an erosion control line. In accordance with the provision of Section 161.141 and 161.201 Florida statutes, the state shall not allow any structures to be erected upon lands created either naturally or artificially seaward of the erosion control line, except such structures required for prevention of erosion. Additionally, the state shall not permit the use of property lines seaward of the erosion control line that may be injurious to persons, businesses, or property of the upland owner. So I will provide information regarding the proposed ECL for Treasure Island Beach Restoration Nourishment Project. This will somewhat be repeating what's already been said in the workshop. And let me get to the So what you see on the screen there is the cover of the erosion control line survey. As I stated before, you have the survey notes on the cover page and the title and the location and length of the erosion control line. A few important bullet points about the proposed erosion control line that we're attempting to establish. The ECL was professionally surveyed July 29th through the 31st of 2024. This survey was overseen by DEP staff out in the field when surveyed. The Treasure Island survey is 2.21 miles in length from 104th Avenue or R132.7 to the North Jetty of Blind Pass, which is at R143.2. The public workshop and hearing was noticed by mail and publication in the Tampa Bay Times and the Florida Administrative Register. If the State Board of Trustees approves the ECL, then DEP will develop a state resolution and will record the state resolution and ECL survey in the Pinellas County Clerk of Circuit Court. So at this time, we will accept testimony regarding the location, establishment of this erosion control line. A recording of these proceedings is being made so that I may refer to the recording in preparing for the final report to ensure completeness and accuracy. All persons who wish to provide oral testimony will be given the opportunity to do so. This hearing is a separate proceeding from the workshop. So no exchange of information or discussion between myself, the county staff can be had. And so at this time, we're here to accept testimony. If anyone has any formal comments they would like to make about the proposed erosion control line. Hello?
Hi, my name is Jason Nordine. Need my address?
Yes, please.
8470 West Gulf Boulevard, Unit 202, Treasure Island, Florida. And I'd simply like to say I am in full support of the approval of the ECL line.
Okay.
It'd be a great enhancements for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments that would like to be made about the erosion control line? Okay. This hearing is now adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.